So anyways, yeah, let's jump in. So
Okay.
Today we have Taylor Grant with, what's the name of your company again?
Bellator Claims Resolution.
Bellator Claims Resolution. So we're really happy to have you, Taylor. Thank you for being here today.
Definitely.
And I'm excited about this podcast because, I've been following you on pretty much LinkedIn. I mean, I feel like you're very active on LinkedIn, right? Like, I feel like you post on a daily basis there. Or?
I definitely post on a daily basis. Sometimes it's motivational quotes, and sometimes it's the videos that I do for what I call the denial of the day.
Denial of the day. Okay. So, so today we're going to get into some of your personal background. We're going to get into some more sort of general terms about getting into the public adjusting business. I think would be good for people who might be interested in getting involved. And maybe you can kind of, through your story, kind of lend some insight into those topics.
Absolutely.
I know one thing with that is always kind of fascinated me about you is your personal background. You're not your sort of like typical white guy adjuster out there. You have your own flavor. And what ethnicity are you? What is your background?
I am Indian, dots, not feathers, right? So Indian from India, and it's really kind of an interesting story that I come from is that I was born in India. And if you hear my voice and you don't see what I look like, you probably would never guess that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And my name is not an Indian name. But I was adopted from India when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
With my biological brother to the same family, and he was 4 years old.
Wow.
And what I like to call white people, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always tell people about that kind of process was that the guy that facilitated the adoption, because my parents didn't actually even fly to India. They just said, this is what we're looking for, and used a facilitator through the adoption process.
Okay.
And the guy said to them, the worst life in America these children will have will be better than the best life in India they could ever have.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so, not to get political, but I know there's a lot of people that are complaining about America right now.
Yeah.
And how terrible it is and all the other stuff that goes along with that. But when you come from that place, there's nothing wrong here compared to anywhere else. Like I would encourage those people to go live in India and see the destitution for 6 months.
I've heard some really bad things at how hard it is there, like as far as the poverty and stuff. Like I've never been there. I've been to Mexico. I'm from, my parents are from Mexico. And so I was born and raised here, first generation American. And I share your sentiment very much as far as like, being grateful to be in America. Cause I've been to Mexico, man. And it is hard. I mean, if you're not in the upper, in the 1%, like if you're in the 1%, forget about it. It's amazing. You know? But if you're not in the 1%, I mean, you're in the other 99%. It's very hard life. Yeah.
And it's hard for me, like, 'cause I remember some bits and pieces of that because I was 6 years old. And then sometimes it's like, is my mind just making that up?
Yeah.
But the things that I remember is I ate the same meal every day. And it was in, just like you see in the movies, those real flat aluminum tins that just has a little lip around the edge. And it was always spicy soup of peas and rice. And I don't ever remember having like chicken or protein. I just remember always being spicy, and it was peas and rice. And that was it. Every single meal.
So, man, that's crazy. I mean, what about your biological parents? Did you ever meet them at all? Or have you like looked into like finding them?
You know what? I have never met them. I don't remember them. And so what we were told is we were left basically at the orphanage steps, abandoned by our parents.
Wow.
And somebody found us, and it is a British orphanage. And it's funny because I almost feel like I have two personalities, because my orphanage name was Wilson because it was a British orphanage.
Okay.
Right? And then now my name is Taylor, and I've grown into that. But I've never met my parents. I don't know who they are. And I haven't even really searched yet for that. And I think that might be in my future. And actually, my wife and I, when we first met, we were actually planning a trip to India to just go explore and see and go visit where I grew up and where the orphanage was. And then we found out she was pregnant with my son. And I was like, look, we're not going back to India right now. The water, the malaria, like it's just too many variables for that. But I would like to say that I could maybe find them someday, but with how it was transitioned to the orphanage, I just don't even know if that's possible. Like the records they had back in the 80s, the early 80s, that is when that would have been. I don't know if it's even possible to find them.
And is something that you kind of you have like a desire though? It's not because like a lot of I know my father didn't really know his biological father, and he has no desire like whatsoever.
Yeah,
he's just like he was abusive. It is what it is. Bye. Move on with my life. But you kind of have that somewhat to a certain extent.
I do. It's like 50-50. Like sometimes I'm like, I really need to do this for myself, for my family, for my kids, and just to see like where did I come from? Like why do I look like I look? Why do I act like I act? Like I'm just like this personality, and it's almost being the first generation here, but being the first of like basically my whole family to be here. It is so different, and I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah. Oh, I doubt it.
But I do. And then the flip side of that is kind of like what your dad might have felt like. Well, they abandoned me. They left me. Why would I want to find these people? Right. And so it's a little bit like a delicate balance. I walk on either side of that line any single day. But I do. Like I kind of want to do that. And especially when I had children, it made me wonder, like, what did they go through? What was happening in their lives that this had to happen to me?
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I mean, I'm sure.
Just so many things.
Gosh, yeah, there's so many things. And then what about like so you have 2 kids now. Or you do have 2 kids?
Yes, 2.
What are their ages?
My son is 7 and my daughter is 6. They're 16 months apart.
Okay. And so they're doing homeschool, at home learning and all that.
Yeah, they finally have been going back about 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer now.
Oh, nice.
But they are back at school. And interestingly enough, my daughter, her name is Kerala, and that's spelled Kerala. And that is the state that I was actually born in India.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You named her that intentionally?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you have like sort of the ties back home. And is your wife Caucasian?
She is.
She is? Okay. So so that your kids are sort of growing up with mixed. So that's how my kids are too, by the way. Yeah. So my wife's Caucasian and my kids are mixed, and that kind of thing. And it's just kind of, I know, I feel like, did you grow up, so your parents who adopted you must have been like middle class, upper middle class, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would say they were middle class and very faith-based, very good Christian people that felt a calling from God to adopt children. So they adopted 2 children from Korea. They are not biological. They had 2 biological children, then they adopted us.
6 kids total?
6 kids.
You grew up with all these kids in your house?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so fun.
That's crazy.
And it's like we'd go to restaurants, and I remember this one time, this waitress just totally like innocently asked my mom, do you like run a daycare or something? My mom was pissed. Like, no, these are my children. She's like, oh, okay.
And where was that? What city were you up in?
When we flew here, we flew to St. Louis, and then moved like 3 weeks later to Dallas, Texas, north of Dallas, which is Plano, Texas.
Oh, okay. You grew up in Plano? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I worked there for a little while. I was running a Spirit Halloween store.
Oh,
randomly.
Really?
Yeah. When I was years ago, I had a friend who was a district manager, and he's like, hey, I need a store manager. You want to move to Dallas, Plano or whatever? And I'm like, sure. I was just like young, crazy. And we did it, and I got to know Plano. It's a nice little suburb, I have to say.
Totally.
It's a great little suburb.
It is great, for sure.
So you kind of grew up. They did have quite a few problems, though. They had a big drug problem for a while, right? A heroin problem?
I remember hearing about that. So I grew up there until about, I think I moved up here to Colorado Springs when I was going into 7th grade. So like for my early, childhood years into adolescence.
Okay, and you guys moved to Colorado Springs after that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yep.
And you end up growing up, going to public school, just sort of average middle class kind of upbringing.
Totally.
You obviously assimilated into American culture with everything. I mean, you're American for all.
Yeah.
I mean, 100. Would you consider yourself first generation American? Or do you not really?
Yeah.
You do consider yourself that?
I do, for sure.
Okay.
And,
because I mean, technically, you're more of an immigrant.
I am, absolutely.
You're an actual immigrant.
That's what I feel like, is I've been given an opportunity. Like, it's a true blessing of all the millions of children in India that could have been adopted.
Yeah.
It was me and my brother.
It's amazing.
It is
amazing. It truly is miraculous.
It is.
You know, it's, I mean, you must think about that the sort of miracle that happened to you and your brother. Absolutely. In a sense, you know, that like allowed you to have a family and grow up in this country and all the things that we have access to, you know, the benefits and the resources. It's amazing.
Yeah. The things that I have been able to create in my life because of that one opportunity that was given to me many years ago. I moved to the U.S. in 1983, and I just look back every once in a while and just see where I came from, and I'm just like, yes.
I mean, in a sense, God bless your biological family, right? I mean, look at it, you know, to make that must have been a very difficult decision for them. But in a sense, it puts you in a completely new direction in life to, you know, have a really good life.
That's right, man. And I question, like, sometimes, like, what am I doing with my life? Am I really using what God has given me? Am I using that blessing to the best of my ability? And sometimes it's a lot of pressure, actually.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because that's driven me. That's driven me to where I'm at now and what I do and continue to expand. Like, you saw me on LinkedIn from the videos, and that's how we have connected today. But man, you would have talked to me 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't even get on camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was freaked out.
Oh, you know, interesting.
All the things that come with that, like, who's going to be judging me? Like, all these people are going to think that I'm stupid and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm not even good at this. And what about my hair? I'm going bald. You know what I'm saying? Like, all the questions and the things that your mind tells you, like, dude, you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And you have to overcome that.
Yeah.
And you have to continue to expand and continue to grow and become who you should become.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been working on.
Well, yeah, let's get into that. So you went to middle school. Did you end up going to college?
I did. I went to Colorado State.
Okay. CSU. In Fort Collins, I think, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you got a degree. And what'd your degree end up being?
So much to my mom's disappointment, I actually dropped out of college when I had 45 credits to graduate. So it was like a year and a half left to graduate.
Okay.
And so I don't have a degree, but I went for business management and marketing, which has paid off. And I'll tell you, I believe that I learned more working at Best Buy in college than I actually did going to college.
How come you didn't finish?
You
were done?
It was burnout, and there was a lot of alcohol involved, you know, partying in college. But ultimately, I was like looking like, why am I going to school? This is not what I want to do at this time. And it didn't fit into what I wanted, really. And so then I started working full time at Best Buy and became the sales manager there. And I was 22 years old running this $40 million store.
Wow.
Right. Wow. And it was incredible. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I say I learned more working at Best Buy, is because I advanced into the management and got to see kind of the back office and how they ran things. And
interesting.
It was very interesting. They do stuff incredibly well.
Well, they've been able to kind of get themselves out from the shadow of Amazon, really, to a certain extent, you know, and they are, I think, turning things around to, you know, but like they're still not out of the woods whatsoever. I mean, Amazon can still crush them, you know, they could definitely, especially with the pandemic, but yeah, so then you worked at Amazon for a while, or sorry, at Best Buy for a long time, or for years, and
for about 4-ish years, and then I just there were some management issues. A new GM had come in, and we just didn't get along, and so I was like, I don't have to waste my life living here, you know, in this space. And then I kind of went on a journey of like trying to find myself and did all sorts of stuff. So my good friend who used to work at Best Buy with me moved to Seattle and was working out there. I was like, well, I just quit my job. What am I going to do now? So I went out there and I wholesaled phone cards.
Okay. What does that even mean?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I've been like, so the thing is, let me step back. So
yeah.
I've been kind of an entrepreneur since I was in middle school.
Oh, gotcha.
In 4th grade, my aunt bought me a huge pack of Now and Laters from Sam's Club.
Yeah.
For my birthday. So I took those and I sold them for 10 cents.
Nice. Yeah.
And then I got more money and I had my aunt buy me more of those. So I've been doing kind of that my whole life. That's just, I look back and I see all these little things that I used to do in the entrepreneur world. But ultimately, wholesaling phone cards is, there are Hispanics in Washington State, right? On the east side of the mountains in Yakima, Washington. Of all places. That back then, they don't have phone services.
Yeah.
So they had to use a phone card to call back to Mexico.
Yep.
And what we had was, we had these phone cards. We had like 10 different phone cards. And I was introduced to this guy out of Arizona, and he's like, hey, do you want do you want to go up with me to open up the Washington market? And I was like, sure. I have no idea what this is. And I'm just sick of working here in Colorado. And so I just needed to change of pace. So ultimately we would wholesale these phone cards to Mexican tiendas and carnicerias and just all sorts of different things. We'd do it on consignment. Hey, I'm going to give you 100 phone cards. When I come back, I'm going to count them, and you just pay me for whatever you used.
Okay.
And so it was great because I worked 4 days a month.
They probably thought you spoke Spanish.
Every single time.
You probably get that all the time.
Yeah. Well,
right?
so I always say, like, if you look at my kids, because I'm married to a Caucasian lady, right, and I'm pretty dark, they look Hispanic.
Yeah.
Right? And they're so adorable.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and so I wholesale phone cards, and I'd go around 4 days a month and just drop off more cards, pick up more cards. And it was, again, kind of in that sales presentation, right, of being in sales, getting people to actually try these. And
so you had some familiar. I mean, retail sales is much different than like B2B sales.
Oh, for sure,
right? Completely different. But it is sort of in the world of sales, right? So you kind of have to be nice to people and greet them and all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
And then you go out to B2B and you kind of start doing the similar things, but you kind of have to interrupt people and be uncomfortable with that. And you kind of started to get a little more used to that kind of thing.
Exactly right. I mean, the things you do over and over again, you become comfortable with, and it was just one of those things that I just started. I didn't really have any idea, and I was like, well, this is something new. This is a new skill that I can pick up and see where this takes me. And ultimately, I did that for about 6 months, and it was great. It was so fun. Like it was something new. It was something different, but it expanded me. At that time, I wouldn't use that verbiage, right? I wasn't in the game of expansion and becoming better and becoming more of who I wanted to become. But that's what it kind of forced me to do, because I was either going to do that or not eat, really, legitimately. And that's I had to. Yeah. So it forced me to grow, and I met some of the most amazing people. And so I hope you actually take this as a compliment, because Mexicans are my favorite people. Okay. And I'll tell you why. They are very familial, right? Like you look at them, they are so familial. And secondly, their food is freaking amazing, right? And so, and it's just like when you walk into that community, you feel like you are part of the community. Like you feel like you belong. Absolutely. It's just an interesting like dynamic, and you can just feel it. Like you can feel the energy. So
no, that's one thing about Mexican culture is really awesome, is the family values, really strong family values. If I think that could be potentially the most the strongest actually value that the culture shares is that we really believe that family is is the core, and it's kind of like ride or die with our family. Totally. Like I have 3 sisters, and like I'm super tight with all of them. And there's one in particular we've been through a lot together, and we just like I just so like unconditional love. Yes. Unconditional love is like so unique. It's very difficult to attain, but I've kind of developed that, I think, with my sisters, to a certain extent. So
it's awesome.
But yeah, and then so then you did the car, and then what was after that?
That kind of ran out of steam with the guy that I was working with, and I just was like, okay, this is cool. I got to now kind of figure out my life. Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is just a part-time gig. I have a lot of time off. And then I just said, you know what? My family's back in Colorado. I'm going to move back to Colorado. I'm going to figure it out from there. And so I did. I came back to Colorado, and a friend of mine worked at Beneficial, if you know what that is. It's a finance company that did mortgages. Okay. And so I started doing mortgages with him because I just needed a job. And it was
like being a mortgage broker?
It was subprime mortgage direct lending, because Beneficial held their own notes.
Oh, did they?
So it was like an in-house lender, basically.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And
so you were a loan officer?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
But we did other stuff, but mostly it was mortgage stuff, right?
Okay.
And
that was in Colorado Springs?
That was back in Fort Collins, actually.
Oh, Fort Collins.
Yeah, at this time. So I went to CSU, went out to Seattle, and then I came back to Fort Collins.
So that was when the real estate boom was happening.
Yes, this was 2002, 2003.
So like selling mortgages was easy, right? Like, I mean, I actually did that too. I was a mortgge broker for a while. Yeah,
But see, the thing about Beneficial though is they were selling 11.5% and 13% rates when rates were 6% and 7%.
Yeah, that's super high. Right? Even for subprime, that's high.
But because they were a finance company, they were regulated differently. And I had no idea that you could go get a 5.5% rate. I just didn't. I was just like, well, okay, I guess I'm selling these, and this is how we sell it. And we did really well, right?
Yeah.
But then the reason I moved on is because then I'm like, so people go get like 6.5% rates, and we're trying to sell them 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do we feel good about this?
Dude,
like,
yeah.
I don't feel
hear
good about that at all. This seems terrible. And there was a guy one time, and I remember this, and I will never forget it, but he was basically breaking down on the phone with me, crying because he had to give his kids a Christmas. And
Give them a Christmas.
Give them a Christmas. And I was like, sir, do you understand this is going to cost you like 30 grand to get like 25 out? Like, do you really want to do this? And he's like, I have to. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Like, I felt bad. Like, I was like, this is what he wants. And he keeps saying that and like, I'm trying to talk him out of doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Because it was so like, if you crunch the numbers, it was a bad deal all around for this guy, but he had to do it. And this is what, like, it was such an interesting, that really changed my mind about what people want and need versus what's best for them. Because that was not what's best for him. But for his kids, he felt like there was such a pressure or something that he had to do this for them. But after that, I was just like, hey, I got to go. I can't do this.
Yeah, no, I was in the mortgage business too, man. And they were like, you know, there was some loan sharks pretty much, and like selling people on 12, 15% interest, because then you get all the points on the back end for commissions. You know, it was pretty high. And I was just like, whoa, like I never went that. I mean, we always had to increase our points on the back end just so we can make a little money, you know? But so I did that to a certain extent. But man, some of the people in there were just kind of going overboard. And you know, that was running rampant, I feel like, especially in the Hispanic and the minority community. You know, they didn't understand what was going on, you know? And so like it was pretty unfortunate to see all of that. And so, so yeah, it sounds like you went through that as well, and then you kind of moved on.
Yeah. The thing about Beneficial though is I just got paid a salary. I didn't make any commission. Like, somebody was making all that money. It just wasn't me. Right. Yeah. And so, and again, at that time, I didn't even really understand yield spread and points and all that stuff because I was so new to the industry, and that's not something we did there. But then I did join a mortgage company that we did do that, right? And understood that and kind of got in that industry. And then I started my own mortgage company.
Really? Crazy.
In 2004.
Oh, wow.
And did that for a few years. And then interestingly enough.
That's crazy. So you like signed on with banks and stuff and got your license and did all that stuff?
Direct lender.
You had your own office, that kind of thing? Okay. Exactly. All right. Wow. That's awesome.
It was until 2007 and 2008, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of where everything shifted for me, is I went and actually had to speak with a bankruptcy attorney. And I'm like, 2007 hit, and everything's slowing down. And I'm all of a sudden starting to see like, what's going on here? There's something that's not making sense. Like my little feeble mind from being in the industry 4 or 5 years is like, I guess this is normal. And I'm like there's this internal dialogue. This is normal. No, it's not. What's going on? So I finally started doing some research, and I got this so well-timed email. So you talk about like providence, right? Or just this blessing. I got this email that said winning with short sales in December of 2017. December 2007.
Okay.
And I was like, what is this? And I open it up, and he talks about real estate short sales. And he goes, hey, is your market a market that's having tough time getting refinances and purchases appraised? And I just had 2 appraisals come in like $40,000 and $80,000 light respectively. And I was like, something's happening. I don't know what it is. And so I read this email, and it was exactly what was happening in Colorado, in the Denver marketplace. Right? Yeah. And I just started reading it, and he goes, what you're going to experience in the next year to 2 years, because nobody knew what this was going to be, right? Is what's called a short sale. People are going to have to sell their house for less than what they owe on it because they're upside down, because appraisals are coming in light, and the market's going to switch from being a seller's market to a buyer's market. This guy called it. I wish I could find that email. Yeah. Because I'd go back to him and be like, hey, what's next? What's happening next? Because he saw the market before anybody else did, which allowed me to see the market before anybody else did. Yeah. And it was so interesting because what happened for me was I went to his conference, right? As I'm like losing money, I spent $300 for this conference, which at that time was just like, dude, I cannot afford this, right? Yeah. And I went to his little conference in Denver, and he gave us all these documents and stuff on how to do short sales in real estate. And so a couple of years prior, I actually got my real estate, but I didn't really do any real estate. I just felt like, hey, this would be cool if I had my real estate license, and then I had a mortgage company and, affiliated business type of deal. Yeah. But we just didn't really do anything that. So I was just like, had my real estate license, and I was like, well, mortgages are dying. this seems like what's going to happen. I'm just going to start doing this. And so I started marketing in like basically the very beginning of 2008.
Wow.
Before anything really
For like
happened.
short sales?
For short sales.
Okay.
So people are like, what is this? What are you? You're like,
Yeah.
you're crazy, man. Like, this isn't happening. I'm like,
I mean, even now, I'm sure our audience is like, what is a short sale? You know,
Yeah.
but like, yeah.
And so basically, I'll just explain that it's you know, you owe $250,000, and because the depreciation in the market, your house is only worth $175,000. So who's going to eat that $75,000 difference? Either you have to come to the table with it and pay out of your pocket, or if you hire the right short sale negotiator, they'll negotiate with the bank to allow you to reduce your payoff to the bank by that $75,000. And sometimes, and most of the time, we'd be able to get them to absolve you of the deficiency, meaning you don't have to pay that back at all.
Yeah.
Right? Some banks are hard asses and they wouldn't budge on that.
Yeah.
But I'd say 99 out of 100 times it was like that.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we
you got
would
into that
negotiate
whole business?
Yeah.
The short sale business?
I had to switch my business or
Yeah,
go under,
you had
right?
to, yeah.
I had to.
Well, they weren't lending anymore.
Exactly,
right? So
right?
we were done, yeah.
What are we going to do? And so I started doing short sales. That was like the transition into short sales. And I was the #1 short sale agent in Northern Colorado. And just by volume, I did 217 short sales myself.
Wow.
And it burned me out on real estate. It was great.
I bet.
I helped people, but it was sad. People
I mean, you
would
were
come
on
to
the
the
phone
table.
constantly with the mortgage
On the phone
companies.
constantly.
Oh my gosh.
Them telling me no, 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 no. I'm like, yes, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. And me trying to convince them to lose money.
I bet that was a great training ground for working with insurance companies.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, brother. That
'cause,
totally
oh my
primed the
gosh.
pump for exactly what I do, and I'll get to that here in a second. But
Yeah.
basically, this was my call with a bank. Hey, Mr. Banker. Yep. Help me help our mutual client, which is this owner of this property. And if you help me do a short sale, you'll lose on average. It was like 17% from their dollar amount. Okay. So if they owed 100,000, they'd lose 17, they'd get $83,000 back. Or you can lose 40% by letting this go to foreclosure, all the court costs, the holding costs, and you lose the ability to lend that money to your bank constituents. Basically, there's I forgot what the term is, but basically banks are allowed to lend 10 to 1. So every dollar that they have that's a performing asset, they can lend $10.
Okay.
Okay. So if you have a performing asset, now it's not performing at $100,000, you just lost $1 million lending power.
Okay.
Okay. So all the stuff that I had to learn, right? Like all the stuff
Yeah.
that I had to bring into the fold. But basically I would call them and say, hey, you're going to lose a little bit of money, but if you help me help our mutual client, you'll lose less money.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do this.
Gotcha.
Right? And we got so good, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we did so many of these that Bank of America gave me my own short sale rep. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just got good at doing that. And just like you said,
Well, you
brother,
got good in marketing, I guess, right?
Yes,
I mean, you had
yes.
to get people, you had to attract people to come to work with you on these short sales.
Exactly.
Right. And
Yeah.
there were some people out there, some competition,
Oh, ton of competition.
but it was that must be, where you kind of got your feet wet with marketing and attracting,
Yes.
leads and that kind of stuff.
That's exactly it. So funny enough, back in 2004, when I started the mortgage company, we started a website called lendingstump.com to compete against LendingTree.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
And it was like, has your credit been chopped down? So like that was the beginning of my marketing career. Is
Yeah,
like
that's a
this
good idea.
stupid website about like this, like, I don't know. And we started getting found. We did so much business with Google one year. They sent us a Christmas gift. I was like, this is awesome.
Wow.
But ultimately that was the beginning of it. And then in 2005, I went to a real estate conference that talked about direct response marketing. I had no idea what that was.
Okay.
And I was like, what is that? And basically the guy's like, well, don't you want your clients, the people that should be working with you, to raise their hand in the audience of 1,000 people? Like you see 17, 18, 25 hands that raise up, and they're the ones that are saying, hey, I need help, versus trying to send this message to 1,000 people that might not ever respond. And so I started doing direct response marketing and becoming an expert in that field, right? Trying to work my expertise in direct response marketing. And that's exactly it. I was able to use and hone my skills on the direct response marketing side to be able to get these short sale clients. And I was on the TV, I was on the radio, right? And postcards, mailers, just everything we possibly could do, which led to us having, I think it was 59 listings at one time. So we were just like, how do we do this? And it was me and an office manager at that time. That was it. There was just two of us. I would go get the business. She would do all the listing stuff. and try to call the banks and stuff. And then when I needed to hammer them, I'd get on the phone and hammer the banks. But
okay,
ultimately, that was kind of our business model.
Yeah,
for lack of a better term.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, so kind of, you know, just to kind of start to go down the road of wrapping it up. I mean, so public adjusting, I mean, from all of that, the one thing I think that's really interesting about all of what you're talking about, Taylor, is that, like, I think the audience should kind of know is that, you know, you've done so many different things over the years, and and all of them have you know, like, when the mortgage company, that was out of your control as far as the economy. I mean, who could have predicted that, you know? So, like, but you use that as a way to, as an opportunity to get into a new lucrative business, the short sale business.
Yes.
And then you use the short sale business as an opportunity to kind of learn about direct response marketing.
Yes.
And then I guess what I'm kind of getting at is that, you know, you've used these sort of like things where a lot of people might have said, well, my mortgage company is going under. What am I going to do? Buy, you know, it's like, I guess I got to figure something else out. But, like, you kind of like use these, like, sort of like low points, potential low points as a way to kind of, like, you know, a way to benefit yourself, you know, and, like, grow even more, which I think is important for people out there, especially now with the pandemic going on, that you can use, like, opportunity, things that seem like disadvantages as an advantage some way or another, you know? And so I think, that's really important, that's kind of your living proof that's kind of your strategy for living, right?
Yeah,
I mean, for the most part, I feel like. But then you've somehow stumbled upon public adjusting, because now you're full on public adjuster, right?
Yes.
And you, Bellator, is that your company? Or,
yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay. So yeah, tell us about your full on public adjusting and Bellator and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So a friend actually from Fort Worth introduced me to public adjusting and kind of got me into the industry. And in 2017, I started Bellator Claims as a way to help people. Like, has always been my focus, is, like, how do I help people? And ultimately every business is some version of that, right?
Yeah.
But I really do. I love helping people, and being rewarded for that just makes me happy, makes my heart happy, right? And ultimately, people on the insurance claim side, that when the insurance company's not treating them fairly, need help. They don't know what to do. Most of them have no idea what the next step is. And that's what Bellator Claims does, is we help property owners, and we do about 80% commercial insurance claims, property insurance claims, versus about 20% residential. But ultimately, these people have lives, right? Like, you have a family, and your kids got to go to soccer practice or gymnastics, and, like, the last thing you want to do is fight for the money the insurance company owes you, right?
Yeah.
And so I used exactly what you talked about. I used the skills that I garnered and gained through the short sale world. And now my conversation is very much the same. Hey, Mr. Adjuster, we know you owe for this claim. And yes, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. But if you help me help our mutual client, which is the insured, then you will benefit, the client will benefit, and so will I, and you won't have to spend more money defending this claim and having them sue you and take this to court.
So did you didn't go right into going claims though, right? You kind of heard about the business. You probably like, wow, this is a cool business. This sounds lucrative. Sounds great. I can help people on top of all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in. Where do I sign? But you didn't just go straight into Bellator, did you?
No. So I worked for a company out of Fort Worth for a while that my friend introduced me to, and I was supposed to be starting the Colorado division of that business. And things, because they were so, like, I just felt like I was on an island the whole time, because they're all in Texas and Fort Worth, and I'm in Colorado saying, hey, help me. I'm good at sales. I'm good at contracts, because that's all I do in real estate. And I just need help doing this, right? And so that kind of fell apart just because it wasn't what they had promised. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to have to do this all on my own.
But you learn the ropes.
To a certain degree, some real basics, but again, almost like in real estate and like mortgages, I had to just train myself.
I mean, the learning curve was fairly small for you then, because you had so much experience. With negotiating. Totally. Negotiating with mortgage companies. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. We're negotiating with. I feel like it's probably harder to negotiate with mortgage companies than with insurance companies, right?
Yeah.
Was it harder to negotiate with mortgage companies than with insurance companies?
Yes, for on the short sale side, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
The short sales were more difficult because they're so heavily regulated. And then when HAFA and all this other stuff got introduced for short sales, it got even more difficult for a little bit while everybody's trying to figure stuff out. And so, but I kind of transitioned when I started my own company into like, okay, well, how do I do this in a more systematic way, right? And so that's what I like to do is I build systems to give me the result that I need, because like, why reinvent the wheel every single time? Like, create the system and then go from there to the next step.
Yeah.
And so I did learn a little bit, but ultimately I was kind of left out in the cold to then learn on my own, which again is how I learned direct response marketing. So as much as I begrudged that process and felt like I was left out in the cold, it forced me, it hardened me and forged me into what I am today, because it forced me to get the training that I wanted from the people that I knew were doing well. And I've got some really good friends in this industry that are my competitors, but also good friends. One of the biggest companies in Colorado. Yeah. He and I go out to lunch on the regular because we're good friends, right?
I feel like the public adjusting industry is sort of like that to a certain extent. They seem to be sort of, I don't know, friendly with each other for the most part. I don't know. I definitely have met some that are not so friendly. But one thing I'm kind of really curious about your perspective on adjusting and in general is that I feel like whenever I see like a black adjuster, a person who's black and an adjuster, I'm like, oh wow, like wow, where did this person come from? Or even like a Hispanic guy, you know, or just any sort of like person who's a minority, and is in the adjuster field. Yeah. I'm like surprised by that. Sure. Do you have that similar experience?
I totally do, because it's very rare.
What's going on there?
I don't know. I don't know if it just hasn't gotten here yet, or if people haven't realized. And so kind of going back to a conversation I think we had before we started the podcast is, if you ask 1,000 people what a public insurance adjuster is or a public adjuster is, I would say 997 have no idea. 3 do. Yeah. And so I think it's just one of those things, like realtors have been around for 60 years and everybody knows when you sell a house, you should probably talk to a real estate agent, right? And then I just don't think that has come to public domain, maybe is a good way to put it, in this industry yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because I feel like if you kind of grew up in a family that were contractors, potentially the contractors may have worked with public adjusters at some point, and then the kids maybe heard about it somehow.
Sure.
But, I mean, as the industry grows, the reach will definitely grow as well.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing is, it's such an public adjusting is like the need for it is so great. Yes. Right? It's huge. It's an underserved industry in my opinion. However, there seems to be this thing where like most public adjusters go after large loss claims. And my feeling is that like insurance companies have done sort of a good job with like the homeowners insurance on just kind of like letting, hey, we're going to take care of you. Just work with that. You don't need an attorney, crazy stuff. You don't need a public adjuster. What's that? They're trying to be attorney. Or, I feel like they're very much, even when I'm working with homeowners now and I say, well, we may want to bring a public adjuster. We can introduce you to someone, a referral type thing. Yeah. When they tell that to the insurance company, they're very much trying to talk them out of working with a public adjuster. Even on a small claim, $20 to $100,000 claim is relatively small in your field. Yes. Right. And so like, I feel like that whole like, $20 to $100,000 market is like it's severely underserved. Sure. And then it's also a double whammy, because then you have the insurance company kind of discouraging any like working with lawyers or public adjusters on those size claims. Yeah. So I feel like the tables are very much the cards are very much stacked against the public adjuster industry in terms of small claims.
It is.
Do you agree with that?
I do, because we all work to support our families and live a lifestyle that we want. And unfortunately, with these smaller claims, the amount of time that it takes to close one of them eats into the time that it takes to close a larger one. But I will tell you this, because of that exact need, I am working on a product that I don't really want to go into at this time. Maybe you and I can talk again. Yeah. That will help them, that will help that underserved community. Because what I do on a daily basis is, like I was telling you, it's systemized. Insurance company says this, we say this. Insurance company says A, we say B. And we do this and we do that. And these are the things you need to know. So I'm trying to get something to the marketplace because it is so underserved. Yeah. And usually it's not even really good for the contractor, right? It just eats into all of the numbers. And so it's a difficult spot to be in. I still take those on, especially like
Do you?
Locally?
Really?
Because I do because I feel like, man, this person is really getting screwed over.
Yeah.
Like there's this lady, she's going through a divorce in Erie, and the insurance company, like I look at this and I'm like, what are they thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not even doing your job properly. Mm-hmm. And so stuff like that, man, when it's egregious like that, that heart that I have to help these people, like it overtakes my common sense.
Well, we work with Public Adjuster Company through Foothills, and they their culture is very much like, we don't care how big it is, because I'm always surprised by them. I'm like, you want to work on this? It's $10,000. What are you gonna make? Yeah. They're like, we don't care. Even they have a minimum. It's like $1,000 minimum. Sure. So like, with this $1,000 minimum, we'll make it work somehow. It doesn't matter. We just want to take care of them. We want,
That's awesome.
So they have this like culture of everyone's on the same page. There's like 5 of them. I think they're growing even, and so they're all like, it doesn't matter how small it is. Like we'll take on even the $10,000 ones. Yeah. And then but it's true. Like there's a certain amount of time. At some point, it's almost like a loss.
Yeah, yeah.
The public adjuster returns. It takes a loss on some of those claims that you have to put in. I mean, there's one claim in particular. This person, it was an appraisal. Actually, it was turned into an appraisal. I mean, he was charging, I want to say like $2,000. He had to put more than 50, 60 hours on it or something, because it got so intense with everything. That's one out of a lot of them, because those appraisals are actually, I feel like pretty good money for most people. They're because, even if you charge $2,000, you can get it settled in a matter, maybe, 5 to 10 hours sometimes. Usually, if we're the contractor, us is kind of good at giving them what they need. Totally. So yeah, we do quite some of those too. But I'm really I definitely want to keep in touch, because I've also had some ideas about that big market. Cool. I'm very entrepreneurial. Yeah. And that the small claim market, there's only one person that I know who I got to get him on the podcast. A guy named Jason Monday. He loves those small claims. Really? He loves them. He actually says, like, straight up, we should look at his Facebook. He says, like, I prefer small appraisal claims.
That's awesome. Good for that guy. He
knows something that we don't, because he's making it work somehow. And he's, has a family as well, and he's supporting, his family and stuff. I'm going to pull him up right now.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, we should definitely keep in touch about all that.
For sure, man.
Yeah, I'm really kind of curious about this now, because Part Fusion Claims Consultants. Okay. Have you heard of that company yet?
No.
Yeah, he kind of says right here. He doesn't have it in his description, but I've seen him post. It says like, this is my bread and butter are the small claims.
That's awesome.
So it's like, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
And there's got to be a system there
for sure
to submit a small problem claim, if you're a homeowner, to get some help with this. That's still
totally
some money in there for people to make a living,
Exactly.
So cool. Well, Taylor, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
I think we're going to call it a wrap. I think we can, let's definitely keep in touch and see how this thing's progress. Come back one of these days, this product that you've hinted at. Yeah. That could be very helpful for people. And also, if anyone needs public adjuster services out there, if there's a homeowner, who may have a problem claim, not sure what to do. Insurance company is saying, hey, this is kind of where we're at. We're not paying anything more, but they're looking at, having to pay a lot more out of pocket. Yeah. That's kind of like the ideal situation, the deal like claim that you'd be interested in working on. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we work on commercial, industrial, residential claims. It basically, if you don't feel like you are getting fully indemnified or made whole after a loss, and you're getting less money than you think you deserve, then you need to contact somebody. If there's a delay, I call it the 4 Ds: delay, denial, diminished. Okay, so underpaid claim, and then if you're forced to defend your claim in court, you need somebody to help you, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So we thank you everybody for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Foothills Roofing and Exteriors and the Media Lab. So if you have any video production needs, or if you have any marketing needs, feel free to reach out to the Media Lab, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.